Welcome to the Trader's Edge. Tradier is the Trader's Edge. I'm Jim Iuorio. That's Bob Iaccino. Also join us at unfilteredinvestor.com. If you want to, we take some of these topics we talk about here and go into a little more detail there. Bobby, there's this big debate going on because LeBron had some big game last night. He's 41 years old, massively impressive. And everyone's like, he's the GOAT. He's the greatest. These people just never saw Mike play. That's the only explanation, right?
Coincidentally, I asked Grok that this morning. I didn't even know he had a big game yesterday. And I actually asked Grok this morning, who's better, LeBron or Jordan? I was just in that kind of a mood. And literally he went through everything. And he said at the end of the day, Jordan is better. No discussion.
Thank you. No discussion. And
That's
again,
what Grok said.
It's about the defensive end of the ball more than it is about the offense. People who didn't see him play every day don't understand how much of a dogged, tireless, intense defender he was. At 3 or 4 positions, he could defend pretty much the whole court. He was quite amazing. Anyway, this show, I know sometimes you guys expect us to talk about economics, finance, markets, and we are going to. We're actually going to bring on one of our favorite guests, but I cannot guarantee there will not be a few sports questions before we dive into that. So let's bring in the chief economist of First Trust, our friend, one of the best in the business, Brian Westbury. Brian, if we can't convince the unwashed masses that Jordan was better than everybody, how are we going to convince them of anything? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, well, that is a problem because those people that don't remember Jordan don't remember Ronald Reagan either, or Milton Friedman, or anybody that actually could lead us out of the mess we're in today.
They're about to forget Thomas Sowell as well.
Oh, God. Yeah, no, I'm hoping that when Thomas Sowell passes away, not that I want that to be today, that there'll be a resurgence in his work. You think that's possible?
Gosh, I hope so. God, he is.
Can I say something? I'm sorry, Brian. Go ahead.
Just say no.
Go ahead.
What I was going to say is, in terms of your initial comment, Jimmy, about convincing people that Jordan's better. Again, this morning early, I didn't even know about LeBron's game last night because who watches the NBA anymore? It's terrible. I literally put that in, who's better, LeBron or Jordan, just to kind of test Grok. And at the end, it said 73% of people asked believe Jordan's better than LeBron. So I don't know that we need to convince anyone. That 27%, they also mostly own. Yeah, they also own Bitcoin, like too much Bitcoin. Go ahead.
Okay, there is a lot. There is a lot to get to that's serious. Is that just today, 2 different things by Trump, which I think are fascinating. I want your comments on both. First one's going to be private equity, Blackstone, BlackRock in the housing market. Secondly, when he just went after the defense contractor CEOs saying no one should make more than $5 million, which, by the way, I love the free market, but defense contractors aren't the free market. But let's pick one of those topics and let's go into that deep right away.
Yeah, describe to me what he said about Blackstone and BlackRock getting in the housing market. I somehow missed that.
Sure. He said he wants to pass some initiative where big mega companies like that can't be buying single family homes anymore. Right. And he wants people working at that right. Just came out about an hour ago. So it's breaking news. So we're like real live journalists here. But again, this is something that you've been working on for a long, long time or thinking about at least. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, I hope everybody understands this affordability issue. It was big during the campaign, the housing affordability and other things, but it keeps getting bigger and bigger. And one of the reasons is that inflation, you don't get rid of higher prices unless you have deflation. And we have slowed down inflation incredibly from the 9%, but that still leaves prices up. And so people are still going, I mean, part of the problem we have here, I'm going to shift gears just a little bit, is that the policies that we followed during COVID, tripled the money supply, $2 trillion deficits. They were designed to keep the economy running, even though we had locked it down, right? And what that did is it puffed up asset values. It puffed up home values. It created inflation. And so if you have assets, and we've talked about this before, you won. And who has assets? A lot of boomers, it's like a lot
Us.
of boomers, like older people. Who doesn't have assets? It's the younger generations. And so I believe the policies that we followed during COVID actually started in '08 are the worst set of policies creating inequality that we've ever done in the history of the United States. And that's why we ended up with a socialist mayor in New York City. And so he's trying to create some news that he's working on this affordability issue, but that's not the problem. It's BlackRock and Blackstone and Airbnb are not the problem. It's the inflation that we had, and it's also the size of our government. And I'll close up with this last 30 seconds. If we take federal spending plus state and local spending plus the cost of all of us complying with regulation, that includes paying our taxes, everything we have to do, it is 51% of everything we produce. That's what the government takes from us. You know, the way Milton Friedman said, taxes aren't taxes, taxes are spending. It's spending that is the real tax. So government is subtracting 51% of everything we produce. No wonder houses aren't affordable. If you only take home 50 cents of every dollar you produce, you can't afford a house. Because they're not cutting the price of a house in half. So government has to shrink. It would fix all these problems, and we also have to stop printing money like drunken sailors.
From your lips, guys. And when I go like this, that's to Bobby. You talk as long as you want. I'm never trying to shush you. Nobody wants to hear Bobby and I bullshit anymore. But I agree with you 100% on what you said. But I will ask one follow-up: is there a regulatory component to housing in this country that's keeping the supply from exploding to meet demand?
Absolutely. And by the way, ever since '08, we've built fewer houses than we need. Like we need 1.5, 1.6 million a year to keep up with just population growth and tear downs and fires and that kind of stuff. And we haven't even come close if you look at the past decade. And so what's fascinating to me is on top of that, we have this regulatory environment where we make it impossible. Let me just tell one quick story. I have two brothers that build houses, Columbia, Missouri. All right. It's woke like the University of Missouri. So the city council is socialist. They have been for 15 years. Every year there's a new set of regulations that comes out of this international body. And normally the building like inspectors in Columbia analyze the rules, and they might take a couple and throw the rest out. In the last few years, the city council just votes, nope, accept them all. And they're all green. And so one of them is that when you build a house now, it has to be airtight. And the way you check that is you literally put this fan in the front door and turn it on. And if it turns, then there's air coming from somewhere. If it doesn't turn, then you pass the inspection. Then the minute that's over, you go drill the holes for your heating and air conditioning and your dryer on the outside of the house. But that adds $4,000 to $5,000 to the price of a house right there, making it airtight. By the way, it makes sick houses. Houses are supposed to breathe. And houses that breathe, people get less sick. There's less, all kinds of less problems because of that. Yeah. And yet this is the dumbest thing. And they just raised the price of a house $4,000 to $5,000 for everybody that lives in Columbia, Missouri.
If it hurts when you keep hitting your head against the wall, stop hitting your head against the wall, you socialist morons. Bobby.
Yep.
Yeah.
Brian, I've been watching, as you know, I've been watching your Twitter quite a bit lately. And you've been in a bit of and this sort of goes to what you were saying a little bit. You've been in a bit of a battle with people who seem to think solar energy, or I should say general green energy, let's call it solar and wind, is a solution for a lot of problems. I've never thought that. I've always thought, until proven differently, it was not going to be a very efficient form of energy. We're seeing crude oil fall over the last few weeks, the price of crude oil falling into the end of the year, which obviously helps developing nations, helps the poor more than anything. What's your overall argument for people who don't follow your, and shame on them if they don't follow your X, let's call it. What's your general argument? What kind of pushback are you getting from people on how really bad solar is? Because I'm looking at solar stocks. I don't consider them doing great the way I look at a chart.
Right. They're not. The I was in the UK. I was going from London up to, I think, Manchester, a town up north. I forget exactly which one. And driving along, I'm in the window, sort of paying attention to the farmland. I'm going by, and then all of a sudden I see this 100-acre solar field in England. They have like 4 days of sunshine a year, and this is all because of EU mandates and subsidies, and they put this thing in, and it is completely inefficient. If you what Germany and the UK and many other European countries have subsidized to the tune of trillions of dollars over the last decade, the installation of wind and solar power, and they have the highest electricity rates in the world. It's really easy to see the damage this has done. By the way, when you go to Europe, I was in Europe over in November, and I had a guy across the table tell me that Americans were killing Europeans, and the reason is that we took away the subsidies. Trump is like, he's not, they're not all completely gone yet, but they are going to be gone within the next 18 months, and they say you're killing us. They really truly believe this stuff, and and I'm like, well, if it's so much better than fossil fuels, come to the U.S. We are wild, wild west. You can start a company, no subsidies. It's better, you say. Let's build. Like, you go ahead. And I looked at the guy and I said, but you're not going to do that. And the one thing I remind everybody is that the Stone Age did not end because we ran out of stones. All right. it, it ended because the Bronze Age came, and the Bronze Age was not subsidized by the Roman Empire. They just learned how to make bronze, and if you still use stone, they kick your butt. So,
Bobby, I want you to get your follow up, but I want to add something to your follow up real quick. Is that because I want Brian to answer, if you're going to talk about solar still, that the national average of sunny days in this country is like 205. Where I live is 185. Where you live, Bobby, it's 270. Where you live, Brian, it's 300. The question is there going to be places where it makes any sense versus places that don't? But Bobby, you ask your follow up, and hopefully they can incorporate that into it.
Well, yeah, my question was going to be in terms of one of the things that I'm a little bit disappointed in President Trump, and I did vote for him. And I always like to say that given the same two choices again, I would again at this point. A lot of people are like, oh, you happy with your vote? Is that what you voted for? Oh, I mean, pick a thing. Yeah, there's things I didn't vote for, but most of the things I did. One of the places I feel slightly disappointed is deregulation. So maybe you can clear it up for me since you've been in government. What has been done and what has yet to be done and why? And you don't have to, just pick a couple.
yeah, I'm not going to claim to be an expert on everything that they've done, but they have taken, we were regulating light bulbs and ovens and air conditioning. They have taken a lot of that away. One of the big ones that they did is they got rid of the mileage requirement for new fleets. In other words, that's how Ford can get rid of the electric 150 and start building more gasoline powered F-150s, because they don't have these mileage requirements that they have to hit. That was a huge one. And I would argue that the USAID and NGO thing, believe it or not, it is sort of a regulatory thing, because what we're going to do is we're going to say, you can't just create these non-governmental organizations and have them mess around with our money. It has to go to a country that decides on its own what to do with it. And I think that it creates lots of efficiency. And then finally, in the one big beautiful bill, and I don't, there's multiple parts of it, but what we did is we said, hey, if you've started a project that we said we would subsidize, you can keep going through the end of 2027. If you get started, I think it was by the middle of 2026, you can do that one too. But after that, it's over, and we're going to end up saving $100 billion of that clean energy, renewable energy subsidies, and that I would call deregulation too.
Bob, you got to follow up?
I don't. Go ahead.
No. Okay. So the next thing, well, I do want to get to the question I was going to ask too. So you're somewhere, Brian, where it's 300 days of sun per year.
Mhm.
Do you change your tune on solar based on geography and the availability of the sun?
So yeah, for some reasons, as long as battery technology and transmission technology can handle it efficiently, then it makes sense. And in Florida, what's the name of the big power company there? I always forget.
Florida
But
Power and Light.
yeah, Florida Power and Light is investing without subsidies in solar because they've
Right.
been able to incorporate them into their system. But it's because they have, I think you said 270 days of
Southern
sunshine a
Florida.
year.
Northern
Yeah,
Florida is like 220 down to the Keys to 270, but it's a lot of
yeah,
sunshine. By the way, do
yeah,
you have longer days when you're closer to the equator too? Longer time sunshine's out? Yes, right? I think
yeah,
I'm again.
exactly.
That's
Yep.
what I thought. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, and so that makes perfect sense. And when companies are doing this without subsidies, they've run the numbers, they've done the math, they have the transmission lines, the storage facilities, all of that stuff, and I think in many places it does make sense. And so I'm not against any of this. I'm
No,
not
but you think
against.
government is too stupid because they'll paint with a broad brush and then give the
Right.
same subsidies for Chicago at 185 days of sun as they would for Key West with 270 because they
Yeah,
can't differentiate, correct? And their
yeah,
brother-in-law
yeah,
runs the company. So
yeah.
yeah. So
I mean, by the way, in the UK, they're subsidizing all these solar fields, and at the same time, they believe in global warming, so they're aerosoling the air over London to try and block the sunlight from making it hotter.
here we
Like
go. You
you
can't make this
literally
shit up. It's literally,
no.
by the way, if people ask us why we're anti-government, it's because we've read the notes. We see
Yes.
this shit. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
Okay, let's pivot to the labor data right now too, because I'm
Mm-hmm.
positive for 2026. Generally speaking,
Mm-hmm.
I think the provisions of the big beautiful bill, some of which you mentioned, some you didn't, which are the tax cuts that are significant.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's a good thing for the economy. I do think the labor market is soft and potentially getting softer. I'm alone, I think, in thinking that it is AI related in the service sector. I do believe that, and nobody's talking me out of that yet. Can you talk to that? Like, first of all, am I right on that? Is the labor sector weakening? What could turn that around? And could the Fed keep cutting even though everything else is strong as hell to address the labor?
They could. Yes, the labor market is weakening. The opening line of my of our annual forecast this year is just looking back at last year. I said we thought the economy would weaken. You look at GDP, we were wrong. You look at the employment report, we were right. It did weaken. We're growing under 100,000 jobs a month right now. Last year it was over 150,000 jobs a month, and so there's no doubt. Today we got job openings data. I think it's the weakest in 10 years, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
And so there is a weakening in the labor market. I think it's coming from a couple of different places. First of all, this bifurcated economy, some people call it the K, but where the high income people with assets won and people low income people with assets lost. That low income part of the consumption sector is very weak. We're seeing defaults rise in just about every area. We're about to start collecting on student loans again, and we're gonna go after people's paychecks. This is gonna hit it again, and so what I think is consumption slowing at that lower income level end. So far, the wealth effect, because the stock market and housing values have done so well, has kept spending up at the high end. If this stock market stumbles or goes sideways for 3 or 4 months, then all of a sudden you lose both of them, and that's when that's when I get worried about the economy really slowing down.
So are you on board with AI being a part, like a big part of the labor weakness or something else?
I think it's a part. I'm not sure how big. So I'm kind of with Jim on this. I'll say it is an issue, no doubt. But is it affecting small business? How much so? All I know is if I call Walgreens trying to get into the pharmacist, you talk to some AI thing and you get nowhere. And it's going to drive me crazy because they haven't figured it all out yet.
I have something to add to that, Brian, real quick, because I think AI is affecting the labor market, but I think in the end it might prove to be premature. I think the enthusiasm for AI and reducing headcount might be premature. That's all I wanted to say, Brian. You continue, please.
Yeah, no, I believe we always overestimate. I didn't make this up. I stole it from I don't know who. We always overestimate technology in the short run and underestimate it in the long run. All right. So I think AI falls into that camp. It's going to change our world. It is having an impact on, for example, on employment. Let's just use Google as an example. Google, in order to run their search, they used to have people that looked at how many clicks people made on certain links, how much people paid them. If you paid them more, you moved up on the list. Then they had DEI people in there to decide whether it was politically correct or not. And so all that algorithm that determined who ended up in the search higher was run by people. And now AI is replacing them. So that employment you can see going away real quickly. The question is, can you get AI to do book appointments to get new tires on your car? How quickly is the local gas station going to use AI, or restaurants, or and I believe that's going to take a lot longer to do, because small business, even though it got hurt during COVID, is making a comeback. And then the question is, can they actually incorporate AI into their businesses? And that's where it's going to take a lot longer to do.
Yeah, my stance has always been, I have found so many times where AI is wrong. I can't imagine managers, well, maybe CEOs and some of the upper level people not noticing the same thing. There was that story recently, and I'm sure I've got the details partially wrong, but the way that I remember the story was that there was an active shooter somewhere and a Waymo taxi drove into it because all Waymo saw was open lanes in the street where the police had cordoned it off because there was an active shooter. And the Waymo car just drove right through it, worried about the shooter. So it's pretty, don't quote me on that exact story, but it's something similar to that. I think a lot of people thought AI would be replacing a lot. I think it's replacing a little. That's, that's just the way I think of it at this stage.
It's going to get better and better. I have a quick little story about AI. I don't know if you've ever played around with Grok and the video part of it. So we have one guy that likes to do this. So take a picture of me on stage giving a speech, and then he'll say, "Make Brian do a backflip," and I stand up and I do this backflip, and my tie's flying and the tail, it's like wild, and it looks like so real. And I always thought AI was doing that on its own. Like it knew what a backflip was, and it was going to take my body and do it. Well, that's what I thought. And so just the other day, I got a picture of four of us. And by the way, we were talking about, I was at the Rose Bowl a few weeks ago, not for the game, but we had an event there. And the four of us stood on the field in our suits and got our picture taken. And I said, make all four of us do a backflip. And Grok says, I can't, because there is no video online that I can scrape that has four people doing a backflip. So in other words, all it really does is take a video that somebody doing a backflip and then put your face on it and your suit color on it. It can't do four because there isn't one that exists. All it did was copy what was on the internet already and change the face and the body size, et cetera, in order to fit into it. It's kind of interesting. So it's not as advanced as people think, or at least as advanced as I thought it was.
That's fascinating.
I just want to put up a comment by Remo real quick because I thought it was funny. I laughed at it while you were telling a serious story, Brian. Remo says, so location dictates green energy, then the Saudis are all in. So I thought that was funny.
That's a good one, Remo.
Yeah, that
Probably
is.
not, right?
Right.
I
They
like it.
actually have been building a bunch of fields because they want to export as much as they can, and they have been trying to do that. I always thought it was crazy,
Well,
but
that is
they
interesting because they want to export. They make more money if they can replace
yeah,
their own power. That is actually
right.
fascinating, but nobody else should replace theirs. So, are you as optimistic as I am about the 2026 economic trajectory? And what about like what sectors will benefit from that? How are you guys telling the major clients what positioning would be different this year than last year?
Yeah, basically it's pretty much the same positioning. And so let me just walk you through real quickly how I'm looking at the world right now. I I'm a monetarist at heart. I'm a Friedmanite, and the money supply right now is it's come up from the bottom, but it's only growing 4.3% in the last 12 months. Back in Bernanke's day, and like for 20 years, it was about 6%. During COVID, it exploded. It was 25, 30%. But it's only 4.3. And if you take that math, it works out to about 2% real growth and 2% inflation. Maybe 2, 3, and 2, or 2 and 2, 3, but it should be 4% growth. So I don't see a big acceleration in economic growth. And then I'll push back a little bit about the tax cuts, Jim. We did have the expensing portion. You can now expense 100% of most business investment immediately. That is huge because it was going to go to 40%. The 2017 tax cut was phasing out. It started at 100 and it lost 20% every year. And so we were down to 40 and now we're back to 100. So that's a tax cut. That's a really powerful thing. But otherwise, we just kept tax rates the same. Yes, tips and overtime and so it's not.
Insignificant. Yeah.
Yeah, well, they're not marginal income tax rate cuts. Reagan went from 70% top rate to 28% top rate. That's a tax cut. What Trump did is he locked in the tax rate from this year into the future, and the good news is they were able to do it forever. So that's not a negative. It's not a we avoided a tax hike. We didn't really get
Okay.
a tax cut. The deregulation matters to me. I think Venezuela is huge. I really do, because I mean, we sliced through Russia's air defenses like butter, and it changed the whole world. And I think this is really good because it's the World Economic Forum and the people who wanted to they're the ones who kept pushing China and Russia into Latin and South America. They're the ones that do everything they can with the UN and NATO to undermine the United States, and all of them are on notice now. And so
Love that.
it's fantastic.
Take a
And
quick
so
timeout. Quick timeout.
yeah,
Luis, will you put the banner up? This is the part of the show where I ask a favor of you guys watching. We have the best. I don't call you guys fans. We're more fans of you guys than you are to us watching us. We have some smart people who watch. Please do us a favor right now. Scan this code and try Tradier Pro for 3 months for free. It's an options trading platform. We talk to traders who've been trading options for decades and some who've been trading options for days, and they all say the same thing, is that it is absolutely top notch, and you can try it for free for 3 months. Just scan the code. Thank you very much. I have one more follow-up question, Bobby, and then I'll throw it to you and you can ask a couple. But I've talked to Stephen Moore and to Larry Kudlow. And again, I am not above name dropping. You know that about me. So hope I didn't fall. I would tell you that to begin with. And I've talked to them about oppressive, absurd capital gains tax rates.
yep,
Immoral. I think they create bubbles. I think because people don't reallocate capital nimbly because they try to bend over backwards to avoid paying the tax. I know I do. It seems like a damn layup to cut the capital
yeah.
gains tax to something that's reasonable. Why don't they? And do you agree?
I totally agree. And they don't, because DC for the most part doesn't understand free markets. When I worked for Connie Mack, I was the chief economist of the Joint Economic Committee in 95 and 96. Back then we were successful, but Connie was relentless on it. And one of the things he talked about was that the capital gains tax was like a wall, locking investment into old technologies and not letting it go. And you
Exactly.
described
That's
it
what I'm saying. It's
perfectly.
crazy, right? Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So they don't do it because we have a $2 trillion deficit or something close to that, and they'll just get blamed for making it worse. And they don't. Republicans should not be scared of doing things that will help, create more wealth, because it creates bigger billionaires or something like that. That's the kind of inequality that's good for us. What's bad for us is the kind of inequality that comes from the Fed doing quantitative easing. That's the bad kind of inequality. Good inequality is capitalism. You come up with an invention, you change everybody's lives, you should be a billionaire.
You win.
And I mean, Elon Musk's wealth is going up like that. Mine is going up like this, and but I'm really happy he exists because I have Starlink and I love every bit about it. Like, so anyway, that they're scared. Republicans, I think, are still scared to be called greedy and for the billionaires, and somehow they've allowed themselves to be put in that corner, and they cannot find a way out of it. And I don't get it. I think we ought to be celebrating business people and entrepreneurs, not demonizing them. In
Amen.
fact, after a hurricane, that's who we ought to have parades for, is Home Depot that opens up, and the grocery
Yep.
store that opens up, and the Verizon guys that are getting the towers back up. That they deserve a ticker tape parade for getting the system working again. And yet we're all yelling at them because they're price gouging or
If they were
something.
transgender, we'd celebrate them a little more. Sorry, scratch. When this goes live, I want that scratched. I don't want that to be in the show.
We're live now,
Bobby.
Jimmy. Before I get to a couple questions, I had a couple of fun things. First of all, I want to put up Doogie's got a 4-part AI analogy that I want to read here. The first one, Luis, starts with: in college, I worked as a printer. If someone wanted a resume, we'd take their notes and send it off to a typesetter, and then we'd print it. Second part of that is my boss got a computer to do her books and figured out she could do the typesetting herself. Next one is then a few years later, the clients got computers and they learned they could do it at home themselves. That's my AI analogy, is how he finishes it up.
Mhm.
I just, in the spirit of loving our audience, I just wanted to put that up there because I thought it was good. The second thing is I want to show you guys something fun. Speaking of AI, I don't know if you can see this, but this is a guy on Twitter who says, "Hey, Grok, remove the quarterback that is not clutch." Okay, it's Jordan Love and Caleb Williams. And then predictably, he removes Jordan Love. So considering the playoffs are this Saturday, we play that wretched team
Yeah.
from Milwaukee.
Mhm.
I'm happy to see that. Now, my question. You talked about how some of the things you think that are going to drive 2026. Where does A, the Fed fit into that, and B, the new Fed chairperson, in case Trump surprises us with, like, I don't know, Stormy Daniels? Who do you think is going to be in there, and what do you think their effect's going to be on the markets?
Yeah, well, of the two Kevins, my hope is that it's Kevin Hassett.
Mhm.
And the reason for that is I want to see QE come to an end. It's called abundant reserve monetary policy. The Fed has grown its balance sheet 7x. It shouldn't be this big. I think the Fed's balance sheet today is basically the equivalent of the top 10 sovereign wealth funds in the world. Why is the Fed so big? Like, this is insanity to me, and it is, and so what I want is shrunk, and the reason that means I'm against Kevin Warsh is because he was there when they started QE. He was Bernanke's wingman. Bush appointed him to go on the Fed as a governor, and he and Bernanke invented quantitative easing, and I think that disqualifies him. I think it should immediately disqualify him. Therefore, it seems like you have to be in a certain group to be looked at by Trump, and my bet is it is one of the Kevins, and I hope it's Kevin Hassett.
But by the way, what you said, it seems like that, because we know that Trump wants lower rates. So it seems like the things that us rational minds would say is disqualifying might be the thing that disqualifies the opponent and makes him be choosing Kevin Warsh, correct?
Well, it could, yeah, but then, and that's why you got Moran out there right now saying he wants another 1 percentage point rate cuts from where we are. So, in other words, 375 down to 275. Trump has said he wants one. I haven't heard anybody else say that, but they're all trying to outdo each other into getting rates down. Here would be my warning to the Trump White House, and that is low interest rates did not they did not make the economy stronger. What really boosted economic activity during COVID and inflation, by the way, was the money supply, and that's what I look at. So, for example, Bernanke held interest rates at 0 for 7 years, and economic growth was 2% a year. Inflation didn't really accelerate. So the point I'm getting to is everybody thinks, and I get it, when it comes to mortgage rates, everybody wants lower rates. If you want to buy a car, you want, and have to borrow money, you want lower rates. If you're a developer, which Trump is, you want lower rates. But that's not the answer to the economy. It's if you have 0% rates, but you contract the money supply, you're going to have a recession. I don't care what rates are. And so what I watch is the M2 measure of money, and I hope they don't accelerate it from here, because inflation will come back, and that's what worries me. Obviously, it worries the gold and silver markets too.
So 2 quick things. Poly Market has them tied at 40% each. Kalshi actually has Warsh 41 with Hassett 40 and Waller at 12%. So those are the 2 main betting markets that I look at. So based on what you just said, what you're very open about being a Republican. Jim and I are both very open about being conservative and not really falling into any hard party lines.
Yeah.
Is it hopeless at this point, especially since we're seeing spending continue to increase, even though a lot of people voted for Trump with the hope that he would decrease spending? Is this crack that the federal government exists on, is that hopeless? Should Republicans go, look, it doesn't really matter. Either one does it.
Yeah. So if I come across as a Republican, it's probably because I write about the GOP a lot, because they're my only hope. I'm really a libertarian.
Yes, so are we. That's what we always say.
Yeah, I want smaller government, and I believe the evidence of history, the evidence of economic data and models proves that smaller governments lead to higher standards of living. That's what I want as an economist, and I'll defend Trump a little bit. He is not. He was never, in my opinion, a true conservative, like when it comes to spending. However, his head of the OMB, why am I blanking on his name? Came from Wheaton College. Russ Vought. He is snuck through. He's a spending cutter. And when we got rid of that special boost to Medicaid spending during COVID, and that was what the shutdown was all about, they promised to have a vote, but they're never going to have a vote. We're actually going to save $1.5 trillion from that over the next 10 years. Now, that's only about 1.5% of all our spending. We have a lot more work to do, but they got rid of USAID and NGOs. All of these things are at the margin, kind of turning the corner with spending. I know he wants to boost the spending on defense, so it's a little bit of the Reagan playbook, if you will. But we are making a little bit of progress on spending, and I wouldn't, given the makeup of Congress, it's kind of amazing that we're getting that done. I want a lot more, and I kind of don't think we're going to get it, because
and here's why I'm asking you that question. And Remo just put a comment in that said, as long as they're politicians, you'll have spending. And that's, I think, how a lot of people feel. And I'm coming in
It's true.
at this from an angle, actually, because Jim and I both own a lot of gold, right? We also own dogs and guns. We feel very important that we say that because we own a lot of gold. I'm spending a lot of time over the last, let's say, 6 to 12 months being a moderator in Bitcoin spaces, both live and online, as a skeptic, but not a heretic about Bitcoin, right?
Yep.
And they're constantly saying, they keep expanding the money supply and they're going to continue as long as the government continues to spend like they do. And I'm finding it harder and harder to hold on to any hope. Do you think part of Trump being okay with a little bit more spending is what he perceives to be $100 billion trillion in tariff revenue?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, he actually thinks he can replace the income tax with tariffs, or at least he said that. That's impossible, by the way.
Mathematically, right?
Mathematically, you can't do it.
Okay.
If you raised it all to 100%, and by the way, trade would slow, and even if you got 100% of all the trade today, it wouldn't balance the budget, and we wouldn't have as much trade if we had 100% tariff. So the math doesn't work.
It's the same like income tax, right? That Milton Friedman and Sowell used to talk about. If you want, why not tax it 100% if that's the solution?
Right, exactly. The only time we've ever been able to fund our government with excise taxes and tariffs is when government was 1 to 2% of GDP. That was the 1800s, like early 1900s. And today it's 21% of GDP. It's impossible. You can't do it. But I believe he actually thinks he's going to get revenue, and that means he doesn't have to worry as much about spending. But what we have to do is slow the growth in spending to less than the growth of GDP. Because if we actually get the size of government going down as a share of our economy, guess what happens? Housing becomes more affordable. Every penny you take less from in government from the private sector is a penny that the private sector gets to keep and reinvest. And that's what happened for 20 years in the 80s and 90s. Reagan started us on the path. It was so powerful, even Clinton couldn't get out of his wake. And government was about 2 percentage points of GDP smaller in 2000 than it was in 1980. And guess what happened? We had almost 4% growth in the economy. And the reason is government was taking less, the private sector was keeping more, reinvesting it and getting more growth out of it. And it won't happen unless we shrink the size of government. So it's not about balancing the budget. It's about cutting the size of our government and how much of GDP it takes.
So I want to come back on that with saying there's going to be a question about deregulating the shit out of things, keeping that going and getting an economic boom is it possible without cutting government spending? But I want to talk about something else real quick first. And I want both your opinions on this. By the way, you guys I'm about to say this, you're going to think I'm this crazy conspiracy nut again, saying that Google is the CIA, which I stand by the way. Let's go back the clock to April of 1913, 4 or 5 months before we're going to vote on the Federal Reserve Act. And let's talk about a little boat leaving from, where did the Titanic leave from? From England. It was coming here, right? So on that boat was booked Astor, Strauss, Guggenheim, and JP Morgan. Now, 3 of those people were staunch opponents of creating a Federal Reserve, and one was a huge proponent of creating a Federal Reserve. He happened to cancel at the last minute. Guess what? Ship goes down, killing the staunchest voices opposing the Federal Reserve 4 months before the bill was to be voted on. With 1 to 10, 10 being hell yeah, it was an inside job, 1 being certainly mildly possible, 1 to 10, where are you that it was an inside job and it was done on purpose to get rid of those guys?
Oh my gosh.
I'll go with this. I'll have the same stance that I take with the Bitcoin people. How could you possibly think Bitcoin cannot possibly go to zero? How can you call a ship unsinkable? I'll go with Google did it.
But that's not a number, Bobby. I want 1 to 10. What's your number that it was done on purpose? 10 being that it was 100% done on purpose.
9.98.
That it was done on purpose. Westbury, where are you on that?
Yeah, I have never bought into the Trilateral Commission and these conspiracy theories, so I'm going to be a 1 to 2.
Okay, 1 to 2 is not nothing.
No,
0
it's not. It's not nothing. Going back to Bitcoin, just real quick. I think
Brian's way of
stablecoin.
saying no more nonsense, Iuorio. Okay, go on, Brian.
I think stable coins might be the death of Bitcoin. And here's the reason why. Bitcoin is the coolest technology. Blockchain, it was the first thing that pushed us here. This whole tokenization system, it's changing everything. All our transactions, registers, like all that stuff. And you can do transactions with Bitcoin. For example, I actually bought some irrigation equipment from Turkey, from a Turkish company, and they wanted to be paid in Turkish lira. I'm like, how the heck am I going to do that? I'm like, hey, how about if I send you Bitcoin? And so let's look at the exchange rate, and I did it. I sent them Bitcoin, but it was like $6,000, and I didn't care whether Bitcoin was worth 6,000 a coin or 60,000 a coin or $6 a coin. All I had to do was buy enough to do the transaction. So if all Bitcoin is a transactional system that you can use internationally and however you want, then what does Bitcoin have to be worth? Like, I guess it can't be a penny, because then somebody could corner the market and then it's useless or something. But now we have stable coins, and my understanding is the stable coin is a cheaper way of doing these kinds of transactions than Bitcoin is. And so if it takes away the transactional ability of Bitcoin, then maybe we don't need Bitcoin at all. And then the question becomes, will Bitcoin ever become our money? And my argument would be, government will never let it be our money. If the reason you're buying it is because government is misusing money and monetary policy and spending and all that stuff, well, they're in control, not Bitcoin. And they will never let you pay your taxes in it. They'll never let it be the money, because they can't do quantitative easing. And therefore the only thing it has left is transactions, and stable coins are cheaper. And so I'm negative on Bitcoin right now.
Bobby, I got a favor to ask for you real quick.
Yeah.
Is that I forgot I got basketball practice at 4:15.
Go.
Can you play us out? Thank you guys so much for watching. I'm going to coach basketball. Thank you, Brian. See you, buddy.
Win. W.
Brian, let's stick on this for a second if we can, because again, one of the things I spoke at I didn't speak at the conference. I moderate. And again, they call me in and they literally call me a skeptic, but I'm not a heretic, right? I've traded Bitcoin. I've owned it. I've sold it.
Right.
I've made quite a bit of money on a percentage basis on Bitcoin. I own relatively more gold than I've ever owned Bitcoin. And for a lot of the things, for a lot of the reasons that we've already discussed on the show, although not directly related to gold, those are the reasons I own gold. I spoke at a conference, or moderated a panel at a conference a couple of weeks ago, where the first thing I said was, how many of you own Bitcoin? They all raised their hands. How many of you own only Bitcoin? Most of them raised their hands. I'd say 85%. And then I said, how many of you that only own Bitcoin think it can't go to zero? And no hands went down. And that was my biggest worry, is that the second that I hear somebody say it cannot go to zero, it's impossible. Well, then the whole world should buy it. And they feel like all they're trying to do is convince everyone else in the world that it can't go to zero.
Right.
There was a couple of problems I have with their thesis. The first one being, they say it's money, but then they also say it's a safety asset, but then they also say it protects your wealth. And there's conflicts in those three things to me. Am I crazy in that? And then the second question is, what you just said is one of my main negative cases of Bitcoin. They took gold from the public, right? They made it illegal to own gold. And I think part of the reason they haven't made Bitcoin illegal yet is they don't quite know how to seize it. They haven't figured it out yet. So what do you think of all of that?
Yeah, I think the reason they haven't seized it, there's another reason they haven't seized it,
Okay.
and that is that they can tax it. So
Ah,
all these ETFs, they're taxable. Like if you make a gain and you take it, you owe taxes on it. And so I think they're looking at it, well, we'll let this thing out there. It's another source of tax revenue. And it I don't know, it gives people something to do like that we can tax. And but like I hope I made myself clear because I get that Bitcoin was a very unique invention and it allowed transactions to be done in a different way than the normal banking transactions and it works. And so that's really cool. And I'm not sure Bitcoin will ever go to zero if as long as people use it for transactional purposes. If it's only about, I'm going to buy it today because somebody's going to buy it from me higher later, or if I believe it's going to be our money, which is what you kind of have to believe in order to really be bullish on it, I think you're going to end up being really disappointed. And the reason is the tokenization, the blockchain, this whole system is finding cheaper, more efficient, less like they use less energy ways of getting all of this done. And as a result, one of the key reasons for Bitcoin to exist is going away, and
so I have
I
two
would call
final
it stable
questions.
coins.
I have two final questions about Bitcoin. You want them at the same time or you want them one at a
Sure.
time?
We could
The first
discuss each
one
one.
is you mentioned how you spent Bitcoin on something. You were able to send Bitcoin
Mhm.
to buy something. One of the get-togethers that happens down here in Southwest Florida for Bitcoin devotees, almost the cultist types, they meet at a Steak and Shake, just exchange ideas because Steak and Shakes take Bitcoins for burgers, but none of
Right.
them will spend it on burgers. So that
Mhm.
to me says that it's an investment vehicle. It's not a currency.
Yep.
Right. I certainly
Yep.
won't sell stocks to buy a car, for example, because I don't
Right.
want to sell an asset that potentially appreciates to buy an asset that almost guaranteed to
Mm.
depreciate.
Right.
If they won't buy a burger with a couple of, minute pieces of a Bitcoin because they're going to lose that much gain, it's not a currency. And
Right.
then the second part that I have for that, I don't remember. So speak on that for a second while I try to remember the
Yeah,
second
here.
one.
Well, that actually, I really like your logic with that. And by the way, what's fascinating is like, remember the heyday? I don't know whether this was 7 years ago or 8 years ago or 4 years ago, but the headlines would come out. Uh, a person uses Bitcoin to buy a Tesla. And like, what a headline, because
Yeah.
it hit two like things at the same time. But then you dig into it, or NFL player decides to be paid in Bitcoin, and and it turns out they really weren't paid in Bitcoin. The team paid dollars to a third party. The third party transferred it into Bitcoin and put it into that person's account. Or the car dealer took the Bitcoin, but only through a third party who immediately converted it to dollars and gave the dollars to the so it really wasn't trading Bitcoin for a car or getting paid in Bitcoin. Like Baltimore, like didn't ever pay anybody in Bitcoin. They paid in dollars. The the third party transitioned it to Bitcoin, and then that person, the player, whoever it was, I can't remember their names now, took the Bitcoin. So yeah, they wanted Bitcoin. Good for them. But the team never paid in Bitcoin, and so you can't force the team to pay in Bitcoin. They pay in dollars. You have to transfer it. So that's the deal. It's like, yes, it works in these transactions, but here's the key. The reason we went off the gold standard is it was handcuffs to the monetary authorities. They couldn't increase the money supply unless they went out and dug up gold. And Bitcoin, you can only have 21 million of them, and that's it. You can't do quantitative easing. And so, do you think the Fed would ever give up the power to do QE? I wish it would, but
Mhm.
I wish we went back to the gold standard. I wish we were on I mean, a Bitcoin standard would be cool. It'd actually be more powerful and tight than a gold standard. And so I'm not against Bitcoin. I love the idea. I just don't think I can never see government allowing it to be our currency.
So do you think the advent of the quote unquote corporate devils like BlackRock getting involved in Bitcoin, shouldn't that bother the Bitcoin devotees who say it's a way to get away from these corporate devils? Number one. Number two,
Yep.
we talked to Michael Green last week. And one of the things he said is that the actual limitation of Bitcoin, which he believes is going to kill it, is that there is no elasticity in the demand side of it. And you're
Right.
going to end up with a system of serfs and lords like the land back in old England or the old world, where there was only a certain amount of land and the lords owned all of it and they
Yep.
hoarded it from the serfs. Which one of those sounds crazy and which one of those sounds
No,
like
they're
something you
both.
believe?
They both worry me about this whole thing. I mean, Michael Saylor, I think I calculated it. Don't hold me to this number,
Yeah, go ahead.
please. But I think if you added up all the Bitcoin that his company and he personally owns, it's like 4% of GDP, or 4% of all the Bitcoin outstanding. And in other words, if it became our money, he would control 4% of our GDP, which is 1.2 trillion dollars, and he didn't make anything to to do that. Like like Elon Musk, he might take SpaceX public at $1.5 trillion. He created that company. He built it. He found people that could get it done. He got it done. He deserves 1.5 trillion. If all Michael Saylor did was buy what was going to be the next money, because that's what it would take, and he controls 4% of GDP. I that just makes no sense. And then Satoshi evidently owns like 11%. So because he invented this thing, should he get 11% of all our GDP? I mean, that's almost 4 trillion a year.
And
In
theoretically, the world's GDP, if it were to
Yeah,
continue to be,
that's
because if
right.
it became a
Yeah.
US currency, right?
Yeah, exactly. Trillions of dollars. You'd have trillionaires because they control the money supply. And that's not, well, anyway, that's not the way the system works. And I just don't, that's another reason I don't see it happening.
So a quick question from Dougie, and then a quick comment from Andy Martin. Dougie just said, "Is there a commission to spend BTC?" I've never done it. I've only traded it. So
Yeah,
was there?
like on Coinbase there is. Yeah,
Okay.
if you transfer it, there's a commission.
All
Like
right. And
at
then
least there was when I sent it. I haven't done it in a long, long time.
okay. And then Andy Martin says you can mine more gold. I actually just want to spend a couple
You
seconds on
can.
this. You can mine more gold. And there's actually a bunch of technologies out there to mine more gold, but they're more expensive. And
Yeah.
so as the price of gold goes up, it's like oil, right? Those actually
Right.
become functional technologies, which then increases the supply of gold and drops the price. That feels very natural to me. Am I crazy?
Right. No. Yeah, my understanding, and I could be argued with because I'm not an expert in like every dot and tittle of this, but that our mining of gold right now ends up being somewhere between 2 and 4% per year of all the gold that exists. So
Mhm.
so the way I've always, I'm not a gold bug, but
Right.
I always like the gold standard. And so if gold was our money, then the money supply would increase 2 to 4% per year. And that's not inflationary. All right. That's like, and so what we worry about is like during COVID when the M2 money supply grew 25% in a year.
Right.
And I don't see us finding 25% more gold in 1 year today. The California gold rush, it definitely boosted the supply of gold by way more than 4%. I forget what the numbers were, but it was a pretty big pop. And we've had different things like that throughout history. But today it's 2 to 4%. And so he's right. We do find more gold every year, but it is not a massive increase in the money supply or in the supply of gold.
Brian, thank you very much once again for being here. Can you tell people where they can find you if they want to communicate with you or at least read your
Sure.
stuff?
Sure, absolutely. The name of our company is First Trust Portfolios or First Trust Advisors. And if you put Westbury in there, you'll be for sure to find us. And then I'm on Twitter X at Westbury, and there is no T in my name. It's Wesbury. So
I actually have known
Bury.
you for quite a while, and it took me a couple of months to realize that.
Yeah. Oh, I can't tell you. I go to hotels all the time. And they're like, you don't have a reservation. I'm like, yeah. Did you put a
Yeah,
T
I
in my
do.
name? Oh, I
Yeah, I
did.
do.
Yeah. Like, yeah, exactly.
And again, for
So
those of you
it's
that have been watching us, thank you so much for that. Luis, put the banner up again one more time, just in case you are interested in options and you want to try a really good professional platform. The banner, we actually end up giving you a discount on the platform. That's the Tradier platform. $100 intraday margins on micro indices, 35-cent commissions, and you'll get 3 months free. It helps the show. If you don't want to do it, no problem. But if you are looking for a new platform or to start trading, that's a good one to start with. Brian, thank you so much for being here. Thank all of you guys for
Bobby.
watching. And again, everybody, if you're not following Brian, I can't help you anymore at this point. Thanks, guys. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.
You know how the financial world goes. Here comes the buzzkill. Please make sure to take some time to read this boring disclaimer. We will owe you one.